The Indus Valley civilization 5,000 years prior. What does it have to do with soggy fields and delayed planting across the planet? Our beautiful blue planet last night rocked by solar storms, bringing us up to a near KP8. Some areas on the planet 8, KP8 plus. Incredibly intense. Did you see auroras? All started with that coronal hole stream back on the 27th, culminating in multiple Earth-facing sunspots. Thing about the sun is, since time immemorial, we've always kept an eye on it, looked at it as a source of life, light, and the ability for us to exist on this planet and continue to grow food. Egyptian star map of Senimut. They understood also the movements and energetic flows through these different star systems affected our sun. So as this moved through the eons, so would the ability for us to grow food in this drying and wetting period flip-flop that we've seen through North Africa when it was lush forests to deserts now, 4,600 years prior. The Harappa phase of the Indus Valley, all that green, lush forest vegetation. Today, the Thar Desert in Rajasthan. Then we got Chanhu-Doro and Mohenjo-Daro. They talk about nuclear strikes on these cities some 4,000 years in the past. So something of our history is, well, the technology development, perhaps we have been wiped back. Because the modern conjecture is if we ever get into a nuclear war, then humanity will be pushed back literally into the Stone Age, and it would take thousands of years for us to re-emerge out of that. Well, that's thousands of years right there. You're looking at emergence after Mohenjo-Daro. The Indus Valley civilization dwindled from that point in terms of innovations, and then suddenly we're back to where we started. But we've gone from incredibly wet forest into desert, and now it seems the rains are returning, and we're returning back into a wetter phase and a forestry phase of that same desert area. Because looking at the ancient river valley civilizations, Nile River, Egypt, Tigris, Euphrates, Mesopotamia, Indus River Valley, and then the Yellow River Valley over there in China, and the great emperors in the Aegean Sea area with the Greek gods and their myths and legends of destruction and rebirth. So on the map here, you're looking at 3 out of the 5 that have completely 180 degrees there, conditions for bringing up humanity as a cradle of civilization for the best term. If you look at this map, it has gone from forests to deserts, and now it is coming back again. The rain patterns are shifting. So what can we take away from this? That civilization has a cycle. It ebbs and flows. There's high periods and low periods. And if you start to look at the causation of why an apex civilization collapsed, it's really simple. It's just about the food, the amount of food we can grow or not grow. There's a well-known saying on Wall Street, sell in May and go away. This year, even the big players are echoing that sentiment. Bank of America and UBS are both urging caution, advising investors to sell the rally. Markets are still struggling to regain their footing. We've seen over $11 trillion in wealth erased from U.S. equities, and the broader economic outlook remains uncertain. Historically, periods like this have often led to increases in central bank intervention, which more often than not means more money printing and a weaker dollar. In uncertain environments, one asset has shown remarkable resilience over thousands of years: physical gold. And Goldman Sachs is projecting a possible rise to $4,000 an ounce by 2026. If you're looking for stability in turbulent times, owning physical gold can offer a level of diversification and protection that paper assets simply can't. Here's the next step. Call Monetary Gold at 1-888-570-2636. Ask how you can hold gold in a tax-advantage IRA and what incentives they have today. Again, that's 1-888-570-2636. And tell them Adapt 2030 sent you. And get a news feed out of this same area, Bikaner. This is in Rajasthan, central. Massive dust storm. Making news headlines because of the intensity. And I thought Bikaner, I had been to Bikaner back in the early 1990s, 95 or so. And there's the rat temple. Very much a tourist there. You can't wear any shoes in there, no boots, no socks. You just got to walk through. It's very much like this. These rats are pampered and fed every day. These pans of milk, and people bring treats, and they're literally everywhere. And you have to wonder climatically what had happened where a single oasis, if you will, in the desert provided life enough where whatever was there was protected and worshipped. And this is the result that has been carried through thousands of years of tradition. If you're doing a historical search, you're going to look for Harappa. That's one of the main power players in the Indus Valley as it was emerging. Now you notice where it says Tar Desert right in the center there. That is now Rajasthan. This place is incredibly old, but staying in Bikaner for you. Jungara Fort, built 1583, so they say. There's an enormous amount of forts around Rajasthan if you've ever traveled there. So let's take you behind the giant walls and mountaintop compound. All built with red sandstone, mind you. The architecture quite unique. And the facade that you see behind the wall shows incredible technological and engineering capabilities way back in the early to mid 1500s. And then you wonder why this disappeared. If they were at that apex in the 1500s that we see across Europe as well. And then suddenly it just disappears and then we have to re-find it 300 and some years later. So why did it take so long for us to re-find what was already known? This is the thing that makes no sense unless you're going to a history of collapse and reemergence. Now, it doesn't have to be a major cataclysm like a Younger Dryas event. It could be a smaller, more intense cycle that comes on a multi-century time frame versus multi-millennial or multi-thousand year, or even coming into this galactic crossing at 12,000 years or 6,000 years. But that does fit with the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization and the others around 6,000 to 5,000 years prior. Something greatly shifted. Now, are we back at it again? And is this why we're seeing so much change on the planet? If we're at the beginning of it and the intensification, then we're going to roll through the same exact things that have been experienced through the past. And looking around the backside of the fort, oh, do I see underground entrances and passages? I think I do. Especially that buried what looks like tunnel just there in the center. Go to the wall and go straight down. You'll see that there is a buried tunnel, much as you would see that large, completely cleared tunnel. I believe that exists underground where that other part is showing itself. Nobody builds like that. And looking through the back of the fort where they don't want you to see, not open to the tourists. The conflict continues into Ukraine. They're up around 50 to now 100,000 acres of crops because of, well, mismanagement and also drought. But at the same time, any of their fruit production is getting tremendously pummeled. Crimea is already declaring agricultural emergency. They had some agriculture that had struggled to stay online. The grains are going to be diminished further coming out of there. And these are some fields that were, quote unquote, usable at the moment, being planted or sowed for this year. But you can see these are covered in fiber optic cables left by FPV drones. Even just to clean that, to get in there, it's going to take a minute. That's going to clog up the machinery unless you have something that can cut through those cables. But those have been there for thousands of years. That does not going to decompose easily. So now we're going to have to take even more crop production offline. And then you start to look around the world. Where else are they struggling to plant? Well, all of Europe. And then here in the United States, the Corn Belt, not doing so well. India with the rice, and Pakistan as well. Rice is struggling in many places in the world. These are staple crops. And we're starting to see it. This is the year, the rollover. Possibly, unless they can get production back online. But how long will it take to bring Ukraine back online? And what about the crops for the rest of the planet? We're digging way, way deep into the carryover stocks to make it appear that there's not going to be any shortages. Corn Belt, different weather patterns affecting early crops. And what does that mean? Well, excessive rainfall is preventing planting and putting it far, far behind the 5-year averages in Illinois, Wisconsin, Missouri, and you can see where the Corn Belt is on the map there easily. And the inconsistent planting season, if you planted those days and certain times that it's so soggy, you're going to have to replant. Farmers are already pushed to a wall anyway to try to get expenses down. They're only at half plant. In that knee-high by the 4th of July, I don't think that's really a thing in many of these places, because if they're not even planted yet, and this is on May 28th, a month in the field after that wet, soggy cold, it's probably going to be ankle high by 4th of July. And then the farmers, they're starting to cut down application on fertilizer because, well, it's too expensive now. Crop nutrient program, that's called fertilization. And the schedule on it, we're going to cut back on our fertilizer, which means for me and you, decrease yields. And we're starting to see this around the planet. There's really very few ways farmers can cut costs. I mean, fuel's going to cost what it costs. You have to plant it. But putting less fertilizer on it and just hoping that there's enough nitrogen, which quickly disappears out of soils, or enough phosphorus from last year, and we can add a little and try to get by this year. You can see why crop forecasts from different agencies have such a wide range this year. And using AI to track down news articles in different producing regions and nations show that it's on the very low end of those predictions, that local reporting of crop conditions is far different than the rosy forecast from the USDA. That discussion does not stop here. It continues Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. Join us on Rumble, the Civilization Cycle Rumble channel, every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. We'll see you there. Bye for now.